fellow bookworms, to Timber's Den. My name is Whitney, and we are reading Nora Roberts' Legacy. We just finished chapters 17, 18, 19, and 20. So as always, if you're not quite to that point, don't hesitate to jump off this video and come back once you've gotten to that point, and that way you can participate in the discussion questions. As always, we are discussing these chapters and these characters, and so there is a certain level of spoilers. And of course, if you haven't even started the book, it is never too late. Go ahead and pick it up. It is good, and we are getting into the really good part. So go ahead and pick it up, and then you can follow along these videos as you read each set of chapters. But let's go ahead and get right into it with chapter 17. Raylan struggled with going back to the old house for the first time since the move. What do you think it was about seeing Bick and Pat with Callie that made it easier for him? And I can imagine, he had a certain level of hesitation just because he has a lot of emotions about going back to that house. And I don't think he wanted that to dampen, the happiness and the excitement of the new baby and meeting the new baby for the first time. And so I definitely see that hesitation. But once he walked in and saw the love, I think that just dropped all that hesitation, because even though him and Laura Lee can't live out their dreams in that house anymore, those dreams are still being lived out, and there's still so much love and so much joy in that house, which is what they wanted. And so that is still being realized, just with Bick and Pat and Callie instead of him and Laura Lee and their kids. And, he really is happy for Bick too. She's a close friend, not just a business partner. And so I think, seeing a close friend happy, and then seeing that house is still giving love and joy to a new family, just, I think, help bridge that gap for sure. And next, Tisha tells Adrian she should make a move on Raylan. We talked about the blocks Raylan will need to get over. What blocks will Adrian need to get over in order to start a relationship with him? And I think, there's a minor one. I don't think it's really even a block of him being a good friend's brother. That's more of a cliche though, and like I said, with her and Maya's relationship, I really don't see that being an issue. It might kind of pop in mind, or more of an excuse, but it's really not a block. And I think the biggest block for her is, respecting Raylan's emotions, and also honoring Laura Lee's memory and respecting her memory. Not only, is Raylan a widower, and so she probably struggles with that a little bit and doesn't want to go there because she doesn't want to, push anything on him, but she was also good friends with Laura Lee. Yes, it was just through correspondence, but as we'll talk about later, there was a deep connection there. And so, I definitely think she's being careful because she doesn't want to make any missteps and, disrespect Laura Lee or Raylan's feelings at all. So next, the PI has her first update. Do you think her progress is because she is fully able to focus on the case, or because the poet is slipping up? And I think it's both. The poet is definitely slipping up. He changed pattern. He went with something that wasn't mass produced and left a lead. And I think the PI, is able to solely focus on Adrian's case. Lena ensured that, she has no other cases, Adrian is her case, where the FBI and the police don't have that luxury. So they, as the PI pointed out, the FBI will follow up on the leads too, but they're just not able to do it as quickly. And so her progress is a lot quicker because Adrian's her sole case, but the poet is definitely leaving her leads to follow as well. And of course, that's it for chapter 17. We're only doing 3 questions for each chapter this week. So let's go ahead and move on to chapter 18. Work continues on the old schoolhouse. How good of a job do you think Adrian is doing continuing to bring her grandpa's vision to life? And she mentions that she's still struggling to kind of see that vision, but I think she's doing a really great job because she knows what her grandpa wanted. She knows it was really important to him that they honor the history of the building while still building a fun place for today's youth. And she's bringing in people that can help honor that vision but also see it. So she's utilizing people that can kind of fill in the gaps, and she just can't see it, but making sure that she does still honor what her grandpa wanted. So she has Kayla, and then the builders are using, they can kind of see it as well. So I do think she's doing a really good job, even though she just can't see what her grandpa could see. And the next question, Adrian truly enjoyed Raylan's work. Do you think their personal connection gives her more insight to his work, or does her insight to his work help them connect on a more personal level? And I think it's both. I think knowing the man and having a personal relationship with him um, definitely helps her kind of see the man behind the art, and kind of helps her understand the art a little bit better. But at the same time, the fact that she does truly enjoy his work, and understands it so well, I think definitely helps them connect on a more personal level, because that's an important part of who he is. So I definitely think it's twofold there. And then Adrian and Raylan have been dancing around developing a relationship. Who do you think is more open to a relationship at this point? And so at the end of chapter 18, we've read the next two chapters. We know they both kind of jump right in. But I think at this point, it's definitely Raylan who's more open. Adrian's kind of not acknowledging the attraction at all. Like, she's not even going there. Where Raylan has acknowledged the attraction that he's felt, he's just kind of not taking any action on it. And so at the end of chapter 18, he's also the one, she's like backing off, and he's like, why? Why do we need to back off? So I think at this point, it's definitely him who is more open to the relationship. And that's it for chapter 18. Chapter 19, Adrian and Raylan go from 0 to 100 in the romance department. Do you think the relationship outside of being romantic was more of a help or a hindrance? And I definitely think it was a hindrance at first. If they hadn't known each other and Raylan was ready to start dating, I think it wouldn't have taken them quite so long. So I do think it was kind of a hindrance, because they do have that personal connection, and so they really kind of danced around their attraction. But I think once they both acknowledged that attraction and decided to take that step, it was a help, because they have a solid foundation. Where if they were just kind of sort of friends and had those connections, it might have been they might have been more hesitant to start a relationship to not ruin anything, but they have a solid foundation. So no matter how it goes, I don't think, that foundation would be shook at all. And so once they made that decision, I think it was definitely a help for them, jumping right in. Adrian moves into the master bedroom. What are your thoughts on her adding her own personal touches while honoring the memory of her grandparents? And I think she did a really nice way, a nice transition into their room. Um, I think for me, I would have had a hard time changing anything, but I also wouldn't have been fully comfortable then. Like, it wouldn't have been my room. And so her adding her touches, but not like fully changing, like she talked about maybe doing a full renovation later on, but at this point not doing that, and keeping little bits of them that were little, memories of them. I think it's a nice transition. She's making the space her own, but still honoring, the two people that kind of built a life in that room. And so I think it's a nice way to transition, like I said. And then it's the 3-year anniversary of losing Sophia and Laura Lee. What do you think about Laura Lee sharing her past with Adrian? And I think it shows, Raylan says that she never talked about that with anybody but him, really. And so I think it just shows how deep of a connection they formed. Even though it was just through correspondence, I think they really developed a close friendship through correspondence. Especially, we know the value Adrian puts on handwritten correspondence. And so it was a valued relationship, and it was a deep connection, even though it was just through correspondence. And the fact that Laura Lee shared her past with Adrian when she doesn't share it with anybody, I think definitely just shows how deep that connection went, even though it was just through correspondence. And now we're on to the last chapter, chapter 20. She does better with adults, Adrian said to Mimi about her improved relationship with her mother. Even though they are developing a more personal relationship, is there any mother/daughter dynamic? And I really don't think there is. I think part of the reason they're able to kind of develop a relationship is that Lena doesn't even have to attempt to be like a mother figure. And she does do better with adults, and I think that's part of it. Like, she doesn't have to mother. And I think for a while, like, she still felt like she had to mother Adrian. give her input and make sure she was on the right track. Where Adrian's doing really well, and the choices she have been sound choices. And so I think there's not really that mother dynamic daughter dynamic there, but I think that's actually a help for them improving their relationship because Lena doesn't do good with the whole mother thing. So, and then we see kindness to Lena as she sees one of the participants struggling. Do you think there is a complexity to her character that is easy to overlook? And I definitely think it is easy to overlook her complexity. Like, I think Lena has a lot of depth to her, and because like she is a main character, but she also isn't, in a sense. Like, she's kind of on the outskirts. She was in the first part of the book quite a bit as Adrian, was growing up and such. But for the most part, like, she's kind of been on the outskirts. But I really think there is a complexity to her. Like, we see little glimpses of that um, throughout the book and throughout her appearances. And I think the fact, she recognizes that this kid is struggling, but is also embarrassed by those struggles. And so she pulls, Adrian aside and encourages her to coach him 101. And Adrian mentions, like, you've always seen that in people, like, when they need help, and it's always something I've admired about you. And so I think, she is a lot more complex. Like, you really don't see that because on the surface she is closed off and she is a workaholic, which she is both of those things, but there's also a deeper level to her that we just don't see, but we get glimpses of it here and there. And so I don't think, most people, since she's not the main focus of the book, I don't think would necessarily see those complexities. Um, but I think she is a lot more complex, and there's a lot more depth to her than what we just see in the story. So, the last question. Adrian and Lena are both very casual when Lena comes home after rekindling an old flame. How does this interaction reflect on how their relationship stands now? And again, I think it shows kind of a lack of that mother daughter dynamic. But at the same time, it's showing that they are developing a more personal relationship. Lena's not being as closed off. She's kind of able to kind of joke about the one night stand, and kind of jokes like, is it still called a walk of shame? And Adrian's kind of able to be a little bit more casual. And Lena, is discussing the whole relationship, how they're gonna, you know, see each other when she's in town as long as they both stay unattached. And so I think, the fact that they're able to have that conversation, it's more on a woman to woman level than a mother to daughter level. And I think it's really kind of cool to see because it is showing that Lena is opening up and they are developing more personal relationship. But again, I still think it kind of lacks that daughter mother dynamic. Some mothers and daughters are completely open, but I think more often it's kind of like an embarrassment, and they would just kind of skim the surface, and not kind of like joke about it like two women who are friends would. So that was kind of my thoughts on it. Again, let me know what you think. And that brought us to the end of part 2. And so next week we are going to jump into part 3, which is really exciting. And we only have 2 more weeks left. We are going to be reading 5 chapters these last 2 weeks. So next week we are reading chapter 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And I'm really excited to get into it. This is where it's going to get good. I'm really excited to kind of start seeing who the poet could be. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts were on these last few chapters. And we will see you guys next Monday. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.